It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here this afternoon at this conference. I know, unfortunately, now you're going to have to sit through my presentation for the next 30 minutes or so whilst you're waiting on the chef demonstration, which is obviously the main attraction for the day and why everybody's in the room. But I'm still glad to have the audience and the opportunity to speak to you. The topic that I was asked to talk about today is nutrition in action, the farm-to-table movement. I think one of the things we have to first, of course, understand is exactly what are we talking about. And today with agriculture, we hear a lot of different terms and acronyms. We talk about farm-to-table, farm-to-fork, paddock-to-plate, ocean-to-table, a whole range of things. And all of these, essentially, what they're referring to is the terms are linked to the movement of food from the producer to the consumer, along essentially the food chain, or what we call the agricultural value chain. So you have to understand, often these terms sound similar, but they have different meanings. But what we're talking about here basically is the food production chain, starting from the farm or wherever the actual food is being produced, farming, livestock, crops, and then the entire length of the production chain, which includes processing, distribution. Sometimes with fresh produce, you would eliminate the processing and go straight to distribution, through retail or restaurants to eventually to the consumer, either at home use or at the restaurant. So basically what we're talking about is the entire chain of moving food from where it is produced until the final consumption point. When we talk about farm to fork, as different to farm to table, so we clarify, farm to fork tends to actually more refer primarily to ensuring food safety and traceability along the length of the food production chain. So what is critical here, and this is something that's very important throughout our production systems, whether local or international, is looking at ensuring that the food that we consume is safe right through the systems. So in a farm to fork situation, what we're looking at is ensuring from the stages that we address the key issues that could cause contaminations or foodborne illness. For instance, at the production level and at harvesting, what we're looking at is safety of inputs, whether it's pesticides or fertilizers, safety of the irrigation water supply we're using, worker health and hygiene, equipment and sanitation of tools. At the processing level, it goes into prevention of contamination through good manufacturing practices, hazard analysis and critical control points, HACCPs, quality control. Throughout storage, transportation, and sales, we're looking at trying to avoid cross-contamination, improper storage temperatures, humidity, and ensure good handling practices. And food safety doesn't stop at that point, even at home and the consumption. I think what you're looking at is we have to continue to ensure that we don't encounter food safety issues through cross-contamination between raw and cooked product, be through improper cooking times or temperatures, for leaving product for too long at room temperature. So essentially, when we talk about farm to fork from an agriculture point of view, as I said, we're looking at trying to ensure food safety the entire length of the value chain. This is slightly different from what I was asked to speak about this evening, which is essentially the farm-to-table movement. So there is a slight differential between the two terms or concepts. As we have moved in with development and we've moved urban areas further and further away from our production sources, people have become more and more disconnected from where their food comes from. This has resulted in this separation from production to consumption has resulted in longer times for transportation, longer storage times, increased processing, increased use of food additives and preservatives, with the negative impacts that some of these have on our health and issues like obesity and non-communicable diseases, which is one of the biggest health challenges within the region. You know, the addition of extending the life of food has to be done by adding things to it, and we find an increased use of processed foods, more sugars, more preservatives, and the impact on our health. And out of this is essentially where the farm-to-table movement was born. The whole farm-to-table movement hinges on trying to reconnect the consumer back to the producer, right? To make that direct connection again as to what existed many years ago. In Cayman, we're fortunate again because our small geographical size, it's much easier to undertake this connection back between the consumer and the producer. In larger jurisdictions, the key link is back through farmers markets and ensuring that the food sold in farmers markets comes within a certain distance from the farmers market, so that travel times are kept to usually to a certain number of hours, ensuring the freshness of the food. In fact, in Cayman, the establishment of our own farmers market several years ago has been key in helping to bring back the farm-to-table concept, and in fact, increasing consumption of local agriculture products, which I'll talk about more as we move forward. So, in terms of the farm-to-table movement, what are some of the benefits? I mean, why are we trying to emphasize farm-to-table, especially in a setting like this where we're talking about health and wellness? Well, one of the first things, the key is in terms of bringing healthier food. All right, when we eat fresh, just-picked product, the fresher the food is, it enhances the taste. It also increases the nutrient content of the food. This is because essentially, when you're dealing with straight from the consumer, your food is being harvested between 24 to 36 hours, in our case even less, sometimes the night before, the day before it reaches the consumer. This allows the producer to pick food at its peak ripeness and its peak maturity stage. And allowing to pick up full ripeness allows food to then develop and retain the full vitamin and mineral profile that the food would have naturally had. As we know, as food develops, those flavors come with, as I said, putting down the vitamins, the minerals, some of the natural sugars in the food. And this maximizes the flavors and the nutrient profile of the food. So this is probably, from a nutritional point of view, one of the key aspects. It also, as I said before, eliminates the distance and the time between when the food is harvested and when it gets to the consumer. With imported food or food that's traveling long distances, we're forced either to pick that food at what we call a full immature stage before ripening, and oftentimes then gas ripen the food. This is quite common with tomatoes, bananas, a lot of fruits where they're picked at an immature stage, even mangoes, and then use ethylene gas to then turn the food. This may develop the colors, it may develop the appearance, but it doesn't develop the flavor palette, nor does it allow the food to reach its full potential in terms of its nutritional content. And for those who, out of season, often eat tomatoes at the supermarket, you can realize how beautiful they are, their lovely shape, color, everything, but they basically have the flavor profile of a piece of orange cardboard and nothing much more to it. It's not that they're unhealthy, but they're not as healthy for you, right? As I always say, it's better to eat some vegetables than not eating any at all. The other thing, of course, you can avoid is that we do not have to use the addition of a lot of preservatives and chemicals to enhance the life of the food. A lot of times, fresh produce is waxed or is treated with other chemicals in the waxing to help slow down the breakdown of the produce, to maintain it on the supermarket shelf. This is often common with bell peppers, cucumbers, a large number of these products. They're coated with a wax, often sometimes impregnated with preservatives to slow down that ripening and breakdown process. So again, these are some of the benefits in terms of the nutritional aspects of being able to eat fresh, just-picked produce. The other area, of course, the benefit is sustainability. When we buy local or buy fresh produce, we reduce our carbon footprint. I saw this example in the U.S. It said, in the U.S., the average, about 16 average fruits and vegetables travel about 1,500 miles from production to consumer. And if you look at the 18-wheeler in the U.S. getting about 5 miles to gallon, that's about 500 gallons of gas every container load of food that's moved across. You add that now in terms of Cayman's situation, in terms of either shipping it by air or shipping it by ocean, and you're increasing your carbon footprint and the impact on the environment. The fresher the food also we take away is less processing, less packaging, less use of plastics, less use of energy in the processing areas. So all these contribute to reducing the carbon footprint and making it healthier. But what I think is most interesting is this aspect of it. When we get direct interaction between farmers and consumers, how you spend your money has a significant impact on the practices that the farmers use. And you can significantly influence the type of farming systems that the farmers follow in ways that will improve the environmental impacts by using more sustainable land use, by maintaining green spaces, improving animal welfare. That may seem strange, but if you're demanding, you're putting your dollars down for cage-free eggs or free-range birds or pasture-fed animals, you're influencing the farmer by your economic choices to go into production systems that have better animal welfare things. It may actually result in lower production for him, but you're compensating him from your yields to follow better, healthier practices to produce a higher quality food. It includes, encourages farmers to use less pesticides, better water conservation. So again, as you demand in talking to that direct link with the farmers, that feedback in that you're buying from them because, or one farmer over the other, because he follows better production, more sustainable practices, then you influence what goes on in the sector and have a direct impact on enhancing and maintaining the environment. And this is one of the strong benefits of farm to table, that interaction between the consumer and the farmer directly. Whereas at the supermarket level, the separation is so great, you have no idea who's producing your food. And that leads into another benefit in terms of that sense of community. Farm to table has brought that back tremendously. You get to know that unique story behind the food that you are consuming. Farmers markets are tremendous places not only for getting fresh, high-quality food, but they're incredible vehicles for bringing back that sense of community that has disappeared over the years with urbanization. You get not only to mingle directly with the producer, you get to mingle with people who you do not see maybe on a regular basis. The social aspects of farmers markets are tremendous. You get to know about that experience. You often get the opportunity to try new things that you may not have because you're interacting directly with the producer who's telling you how it's grown, how to eat it, how you can cook it, things like that you just can't get in a supermarket, right? And all of this adds to the enjoyment of the food beyond just the flavor profile in terms of your experience in consumption. So again, one of the big benefits of going the farm to table. In terms of just some examples here, a couple of people, I hope they don't mind me using their photographs, but in terms of knowing who our vendors, two of our key vendors from the farmers market and the stories behind them. Mr. Hamlin Stevenson was in this picture, came originally as a contractor and from construction his whole life, and always had a passion for farming, and now he's retired, has gone into it full time. And there's a whole different background as terms of how he's got into it and why he chooses to, on what he farms in terms of fresh produce and in meats. Another one, the regular vendors at the market, Patrick Panton. When we started the market, Pat was a big producer of ornamental plants. He was into landscaping, he was into horticulture. In fact, he came to the market originally selling his ornamental plants. And then when he saw the demand and the interest of consumers, and also the fact that there was gaps in the market in terms of leafy greens and a lot of the leaf vegetables and herbs, he saw a tremendous opportunity and largely reinvented a lot of his production system, and now is one of our bigger farmers in the market. So a lot of this is the background that you don't get when you visit the supermarket, or you don't interact directly with your producer and consumer and know why these people are doing what they do as well. In terms of other benefits beyond the community and the thing, there's also, of course, the economic benefits. When you buy local, it keeps the money in the economy. You get additionally what we refer to as the multiplier effect, that every dollar you spend locally in the economy multiplies the impact on the economy. I saw this interesting study from London from the New Economics Foundation, where they found in a study that local farm's income generated twice as much money for the local economy than the same level of income from a supermarket in the same area. Right? Various other economic studies have shown that the multiplier effect in agriculture is 2 to 3 times higher than in any other productive sector. So the money you spend in agriculture has a much bigger boost on the economy than money you say spend in retail, money you spend in a lot of the other components, the service industries in our economy. The other big impact besides the multiplier effect is that buying money in agriculture actually then reduces what we refer to as leakages from the economy. This is money that goes out of our economy. And to give this in a graphical example, just using my 2 bananas here, if we look at imported food, the vast bulk of what we spend, every dollar we spend on imported food, is what's going straight back out to buy the food, for the shipping, the freight, all the other costs that came to bring that food to Cayman. You get the piece that the retailer, the merchant captures, but even out of that, a part of what the merchant captures goes to his overheads, his packaging material, what he uses to run his operation. So you only have a relatively small part of your dollar spend that stays in the economy and then multiplies slightly in the economy. Whereas when you buy local, You have the piece going to the merchants, which will be similar as this. So you have the bit that the merchant captures, which goes to wages and his staff and himself, which works into the economy, less the little bit that leaves. But now the vast majority of your dollar spend is what stays in the economy. Yes, some is lost because our farmers still have to import fertilizers, they still have to import inputs and that sort of thing. But the vast majority of everything that the dollar you spend on local food stays into the economy. And because of the large multiplier that agriculture has, the impacts are significantly greater. So we lose a lot less. Leakages in tourist economies in the Caribbean have been put somewhere often as high as 85 to 90% of every dollar in the economy goes back out of the economy, whereas in economies that are more farming or agricultural driven, it reduces the leakages down to probably more like 40 to 50%, that sort of level, significantly more. But it is one of these advantages, and I say it's the economic impact of what we get of buying local. And lastly, in terms of direct benefits of being a farm to table, is in terms of seasonality. We've got spoiled these days where basically we can walk in a supermarket 365 days a year and get whatever we want. So we lose that variation in terms of what comes in and out of season. When you buy in farmers markets, you tend to reconnect back with seasonality. And we may forget in Cayman Islands that, yes, we don't have a winter or fall, but we definitely do have distinct seasons when it comes to production. Our December through April, May is the primary time for things like tomatoes and a lot of our vegetable crops. When we get into the hot months in the summer, then it's mainly the fruit season, mangoes and a lot of tropical fruits, some more like the callaloos, the leafy greens, the field crops that do. Buying seasonally gives you, as I said, it gives you that variety in your diet. It also then allows you to be buying at the peak of ripeness. If you're buying a mango in Cayman in July versus buying one in January or February, you recognize the difference because you're buying one that's locally vine ripened. Or if you're buying your tomatoes between December and March from the farmer's market versus the imported, even the vine ripened imported, you will notice the significant difference in terms of nutrition and the flavor. You're also buying it as most abundant, of course, hopefully lowest cost time when prices drop. And as I said, it adds that variety. So it reconnects us back to our roots in terms of variety of our foods and gets us away from the routine of eating the same thing over and over again. Let me watch my time. So bottom line, basically, it was asked about farm to table, but I want to talk a little more just beyond the farm to table, which is the benefits of buying, and this applies to any farm to table, whether you're in the Caribbean or in North America. But now in the Caribbean, there's also other advantages because you're now dealing with tropical crops. And in general, nutritionally wise profile, a lot of tropical crops are significantly better nutritional profile than a lot of the equivalent temperate alternatives. Looking at root crops and cassava, I won't go through all of this, but cassava, as we know, it has one of the highest calorie values of all the tubers. It's very good in terms of vitamin B complex. It's low in fat. Yams have one of these, an excellent source of dietary fiber. They're very good sources of complex carbohydrates. The low glycemic index in healthy foods. Sweet potatoes, they rank some of the highest in terms of some of their vitamin A content, of highest of any root vegetables. The doctors in the room can tell me that they're better for diabetics because of their higher amylose to amylopectin ratio. Good source of phenolic compounds, it's beta-carotene, etc. All of these rank in terms of comparing to some of the temperate root crops on a better level, just as a comparison between cassava, sweet potato, and Irish potato. You can see, for instance, definitely in terms of vitamin A, where sweet potatoes are, where yams fall in terms of potassium content, in terms of dietary fiber. Above the sweet potatoes, the yams are still the highest. Yes, Irish potatoes in some areas, iron, for instance, still ranks better, and in some of the protein, but in general, a lot of the vitamin and mineral profiles, a lot of our root crops and root tubers actually have better consumption, and we're gradually seeing that change nowadays. It's interesting, I've been in agriculture long enough to see the thrust in agriculture to breed sweet potatoes that had very little sugar, no carotenoids, that looked white, to match as close as possible to Irish or English potatoes, so we could do substitution and the chefs wouldn't recognize the difference between a French fry made from sweet potatoes or one made from English potatoes. So in the last about 5 to 10 years, we suddenly realized that we're going in completely the wrong direction, recognizing the nutritional benefit of sweet potatoes, and the breeding has flipped right back the other direction, where we're now looking for the high carotene sweet potatoes, the yellow ones, to try and get back that nutritional, and people are actually appreciating the flavor difference between sweet potatoes to Irish potatoes. So sometimes even us in agriculture, we get it wrong as well in terms of what we're doing or what we think the consumer wants. I won't go through in detail, but again, mangoes, if you have time to look down, and I have some handouts I can share with afterwards, anybody's interested. Again, mangoes, guavas are very high in vitamin C. Mangoes do extremely well in a lot of the vitamin profile. I think it was interesting that there was a study that shows mangoes, a recent study found that mangoes are very good at helping protect against various forms of cancer because of the profile of the mangoes. Avocados, as we know, very high in monounsaturated fats. They're being looked at by several people as some of these superfoods as well. So again, our tropical fruit crops consistently exceed a lot of the temperate ones that we deal with. Again, comparing them to apple, you can see vitamin C content in guavas, potassium in mangoes. Consistently in most things, the tropical crops fare way better in terms of their nutrient content, their vitamins, than a lot of the temperate alternatives. So buying local not only gives you that advantage of freshness and taste, but also health and nutrition profile. Just a very quick on vitamin C, we often even forget our lowly little West Indian cherry, which has more vitamin C than any other fruit out there, more than any citrus. It has the single highest vitamin C profile of any fruit that you can find. Just touching briefly, if I'm here, and I'm going to speak a bit about our farm to table and a little bit to give opportunity to speak a little bit of background about agriculture in general in the Cayman Islands and some of the issues and some of the challenges. Agriculture here, of course, we're challenged by lack of limited land space, limited water, small size of production. We can't achieve economies of scale, and also higher cost of inputs and labor and lack of protection. This is a free market economy, and our farmers have to operate in an environment of competition with Miami, essentially, not competing with other farmers, but competing with whatever's available in Miami. So for agriculture here, our focus is always to try to encourage farmers to look at niche production. Look somewhere where they have a comparative advantage, at least in the perception of the consumer, where the consumer perceives an advantage of the local products over what they're importing. In terms of whether it's uniqueness, because it's like our local seasoning peppers, you can't get them anywhere else. Whether it's in terms of freshness and quality, because it's vine ripened. Whether it's because of the production system, cage-free eggs versus caged eggs, or because of the nutrition profile. And we're very proud in Cayman now for antimicrobial resistance. Cutting down the use of antibiotics in livestock has now become the buzzword. In Cayman, we have not been importing, we don't allow medicated feeds and haven't allowed them since the 25 years that I've been with the department. So none of our livestock use medicated feeds, and that's been our policy now for the last 25 years. So we've been ahead of the curve with that. We will go as far as even if our importers misship us medicated feed, we'll dump it rather than sell it to our livestock farmers. But in terms of what we grow here, the range of crops and stuff in Cayman, as you're seeing out there, we have our production falls into several categories, from traditional production like bananas and plantains, root crops, the yams and cassavas. Maybe not as much as there were in previous generations. This is what is a staple to people to consume because the profit level is not as high. We've gradually seen more shift to production in terms of field crops like hot peppers, seasoning peppers, the vegetables, particularly leafy greens, callaloo, tomato, bell peppers, great increase on herbs because of demand, mango production, guavas, avocados, even our livestock, and a growing sector in poultry. You may not realize, people think that agriculture here is very small, but this year alone, talking to two of our growers, the mango crop this year exceeded, those two growers alone, one did 125,000 pounds, still producing, and the other did 35,000 pounds. So in a good year, we do over 200,000, between 200,000 to 250,000 pounds of mangoes in a little small island like this. Talking to one of our poultry farmers, an egg farmer, he's now doing an average of 15,000 dozen eggs a year. And he thinks he's just scratching the surface of the demand locally for fresh eggs, and tremendous opportunities there. So this is what some of the things that we are looking at. In terms of how we produce, our focus here in Cayman is on, for our farmers, a lot of it is on protected agriculture. As I said to you, our costs are high, our land is limited, our costs are high, our water is scarce. So we try to focus production on areas where we can ameliorate against these things through shade houses, through the use of grow boxes, vertigrow systems, drip irrigation. We try to focus on reduced pesticide use through integrated pest management, where we still use pesticides, but it's sort of a last resort. We try to use biological, cultural, other control practices first and foremost, and pesticides as a backup. We focus as much as possible, as I said, on things like cage-free production, free-range production, or natural livestock production with no antibiotics, no growth hormones, pasture-fed, pasture-raised. We try to tailor the system. We're a high-cost producer, and we have to produce a quality product that the consumer is willing to pay that benefit for and perceive the health benefits. So just some pictures. This one is not local, but we do have a vertical system like this in Cayman operating very well. But some of our tropical shade houses, some grow boxes, stuff, things that you can do in your backyard. Production here can be as limited as there's a couple of grow boxes in your backyard to larger commercial farmers doing what they do. From a department and a government perspective, our focus has always been in terms of expanding agriculture through a focus on enhanced technologies. What I was just talking about, technologies that will counteract against the limitations that we have. We try to encourage more and more farmers to focus on agribusiness approach as a way from just traditional farming as a hobby, because that's the only way you're going to see the quality. Again, this is consumer demand. Years ago, anytime I was in agriculture, a lot of farmers had the perspective as, I plant what I feel like and somebody's going to buy it. Whereas ever since we brought the farmer's market along and you know have this direct interaction between the consumer and the farmer, a lot of our farmers are waking up and recognizing, hey, I need to grow what people want. There's opportunities. People are asking me for stuff I didn't even think could grow here. I never thought of growing here. You know, we have farmers doing very well with kale. I mean, 5 years ago, there wasn't a farmer on this island that knew anything about kale or growing kale at all. You know, and this is the influence for the consumer coming into the market and say, hey, can you grow this? And the farmer's going, well, there's a market. We can do that. So that has been tremendously beneficial. Targeting these niches, focusing on our farmers' markets. And one of the things here, agritourism and culinary tourism. As the chef will demonstrate at Ritz, we've been very fortunate here in Cayman, and I personally think we lead a lot of the Caribbean in terms of how we've been able to integrate a lot of our local product into the restaurants and into the chefs. You now see local products being featured on menus. We see restaurants like the Brasserie where they have their own shade house next door and they're producing their own thing and they promote it on their menu that this is their eggs, this is their honey. You know, the Ritz has led the way in terms of a lot of things. And it's been critical for Cayman, actually, having top flight chefs like the Eric Repair from the Ritz, who has one of the best restaurants in New York, endorsing local agriculture. That makes people recognize, hey, there's quality in what we do. And if it can be sold in the best restaurants in Cayman, why can't it be in my kitchen? And it's been a huge benefit for our farmers and for local production. I think there's a lot more opportunities there as we move forward. Cayman right now, we're importing, we're importing, I think, let's check before last year, $199 million worth of food and beverages. Of that, 14 million was on processed foods and about 135 million was processed foods. That's a big market that we can tap into, especially on processed. I mean, we're not going to be growing wheat and grain and corn and soybeans and stuff like that, but we can do a lot more in areas like eggs and poultry and fresh vegetables and make that conversion and keep that in terms of benefit our economy, but also benefiting the health of our people. I want to mention, in closing, some of the issues of farm to table, some of the challenges. I gave you all the benefits, but everything always has challenges. When we talk about eating fresh and eating and cooking from scratch, there is also often the cost that it's higher. That's one of the criticisms you get. The fresh local produce is higher than some of the imported things, and that is a reality. We're fortunate in Cayman that we do have an economy with a relatively high disposable income who can afford to pay, but low-income households find themselves challenged. And one of the challenges for policymakers is how do we make fresh food affordable to low-income families to encourage them to buy fresh rather than going to Burger King where you could probably feed your family of 4 for less than $10. as opposed to buying and cooking at home. And this is a reality and a challenge that we have to address and deal with, because we have, it's critical. That's where we get that impact. Lack of processing. Again, it's great to have fresh produce, but not everybody has the time always to cook, peel yams, peel sweet potatoes, prepare meals from scratch. I know the chef is probably going to show us some shortcuts. But in terms of finding ways to do some processing to cut the load, cassava flour, dried cassava, putting cassava now as an example into breads and stuff like that. We need to look at more ways to make sure that the fresh, healthy stuff is getting to the consumer where they're time constrained. And from our producers as well, of course, we still have limited opportunities for value added in Cayman. And this impacts the farmers in terms of market for seconds, market for when we have gluts and scarcities. We need to look at doing more processing, whether it's doing jams, sauces, other ways to use the food that we're producing, because not everything is grade 1 that can make it into the marketplace. But these are some of the issues, I said, we have to look at it from a nutritional point of view, is making sure that healthy food is also affordable, but not driving down the price that the farmer can't make any money. Because that's one of the challenges in agriculture. Agriculture is one of the only sectors where the true cost of food has been declining steadily for the last 20-something years. It may seem that food costs are actually high, but relative to your disposable income worldwide, globally, food prices continue to go down. And governments want to try and keep cost of food down, but you have to look at the farmer who's investing this in the business, who needs the return to be able to make it worthwhile. So we have to find a way to strike that balance. And with that, I just leave with this last. All of this, from our point of view in the Department of Agriculture and from government, ties back into having an overall overarching national policy. And this is something that we're promoting and something that I know the government is behind. We've done a draft, and hopefully this something comes soon, but talking about a national food and nutrition security policy. We in agriculture recognize it's not only about food security in terms of having food to eat, it's about having the right food and about nutrition as well, because one of the single biggest things, and I'm speaking at a medical thing, is non-communicable diseases, and one of the single biggest problems that we face and rising health costs, and addressing that through food. So basically, a national food and nutrition security policy looks at issues of availability in terms of producing more safe and market-appropriate foods. Again, in our case, target our niche market. There's no point growing stuff that a farmer can't make any money on. To say we're going to suddenly try to grow wheat or soybeans here makes no sense. Access, in our case in Cayman, access in a lot of countries is about physically getting the food from rural areas to urban areas. We don't have that problem here. Access here is more about affordability, access to people who necessarily can't afford fresher produce, right? Or access in terms of avoiding our dependence on a sole source of supply like the US, looking at other possible alternative sources of supply so we're not depending just on one market to supply the food for Cayman. And what this conference is about is this whole thing of changing perceptions and increasing and educating people of the benefits of eating healthy, buying locally, and supporting and getting the right type of food. And all of this, of course, has to be built on a baseline of stability in terms of, with climate change, mitigating against climate change, ensuring sustainable and resilient production, and protecting and preserving our resources, whether it's our water resources or whether it's our protecting our borders from pests and diseases, and which actually, I'll close with the comment that was said, we largely don't pack a pest here. One of our biggest challenges for agriculture is the constant introduction of new insect pests and diseases. And unfortunately, some of the biggest culprits of that are us ourselves, who go away and see that lovely fruit in a neighbor's garden or see a plant that we don't have and think I can bring back a little bit without declaring it to us folks at agriculture, who we think are horrible and going to just seize it and take it away from you. But we do that to try and protect the country, because we're constantly facing new pest threats and new diseases in this hemisphere, where we don't have the resistant or the insects, the natural balances to counteract them. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. As I said, I hope I haven't delayed you too long from your cooking demonstration. And I hope it gives you a little bit of background, not just about the farm-to-table movement, about what is going on in agriculture here in Cayman, and a bigger perception of how you can continue to support that development through the dollars that you spend.